Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive into this, because today we're taking a deep dive into an absolutely incredible ancient account that honestly still resonates so powerfully today. We're going to unpack the rich historical and spiritual journey found right in the ancient text of 2 Chronicles, chapter 7.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a spectacular temple dedication, then we'll pivot to God in the quiet night and uncover some hidden history through the returnee community's despair, followed by the promise to heal. Finally, we'll map out the 4 steps to restoration and apply this whole message to our lives right now. All right, let's get started.
Part 1. The Spectacular Temple Dedication, Fire and Glory. So, this moment, it marks a massive, literal game-changer in history. You see, for generations, the presence of God was always associated with a mobile tent, a tabernacle that moved wherever the people moved. But now, King Solomon has built this permanent, absolutely magnificent temple in Jerusalem. And the big theological question buzzing in everyone's mind was, would God actually agree to dwell in a single stationary building?
To answer that question, the text gives us this incredible timeline of events to validate God's approval. Look at minute 0. The exact moment Solomon finishes his really long dedication prayer, there is zero delay. Literally immediately, fire miraculously falls from heaven and completely consumes the sacrifices on the altar. And then, shortly after that, what the text describes as the glory of the Lord fills the temple. And it's so powerful that the priest can't even step foot inside. The ongoing result of all this? The people just fall to the ground, bowing on the pavement and singing praises. I mean, it was the ultimate, unmistakable daytime spectacle. No way you could miss it.
Section 2. God in the quiet night, the pivot to solitude. Because right after that, the narrative makes a really unexpected yet profound shift.
So, after the massive crowds finally went home and that dazzling fire from heaven faded out, the text specifically notes that God appeared to Solomon again, but this time it was in the night. Now you might be wondering, why not during the bright day in front of everyone? Well, to really understand this, consider this brilliant insight from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He said, one can be instructed in society, one is inspired only in solitude. It's like God waited until the applause totally stopped, and the crowds were completely gone to deliver his deepest, most intimate promise to Solomon all alone.
When you compare these two distinct experiences, it's pretty striking. On one hand, you have the daytime spectacle. It's public, it's loud, it's highly visible. But contrast that with the nighttime solitude. That is private, quiet, and leads to deep personal revelation. And this brilliantly illustrates that while loud and visible moments are, great for gathering a community together, the most profound spiritual instruction often happens in complete stillness.
Moving into Section 3, the returnee community's despair, a hidden historical context. To fully grasp the sheer weight of this nighttime message, we really have to peel back a layer of history and look at the people who were actually reading this.
What's super fascinating here is how this event was eventually recorded. Both the Book of Kings and the Book of Chronicles document this exact period of history. But get this, Kings entirely omits the details about the fire falling from heaven and that spectacular glory. It just leaves it out. Meanwhile, the Book of Chronicles deliberately emphasizes the fire and the glory. So why the difference? Well, it all comes down to the audience. Chronicles was written for a deeply traumatized group of people who had just returned from decades of captivity in Babylon.
When these exiles finally returned to Jerusalem, they immediately set out to rebuild the temple. But honestly, this second temple was a bit shabby. Think of it like a highly anticipated movie sequel that completely misses the mark compared to Solomon's glorious original. Looking at this disappointing, kind of pathetic structure, the returning community deeply doubted if God was truly with them anymore. So, the writer of Chronicles specifically highlighted that fire and glory of the past to reassure this incredibly doubtful audience that God's powerful response is never, ever limited by physical or external appearances.
To truly understand their emotional state at this time, consider this famous line from the Korean poet Lee Sang-ha, "Does spring come to stolen fields?" This beautifully anchors this cultural concept of the loss of land. You see, the returnee community hadn't just lost a fancy building. They had lost their entire nation, returning to a ruined, desolate home after being prisoners, while it felt like a deep, unhealed wound. They were dealing with the profound trauma of a stolen and broken landscape, and they were really wondering if true restoration could ever actually happen for them.
That heavy, collective despair brings us right into Section 4, the promise to heal, addressing the wounded land.
Remember that quiet nighttime meeting we talked about earlier? Well, God actually outlines to Solomon some incredibly harsh physical realities that would one day hit them. He mentions drought and closed skies, locusts totally consuming their meager crops, plagues spreading among the people, and just the sheer frustration of working a ruined land with absolutely zero harvest. For the returning community reading this text decades later, these were not just, spiritual metaphors. This was their desperate daily reality. They were experiencing literal famine. So God's promise here wasn't just a nice, comforting thought. It was a desperate, absolute requirement for their basic survival.
In the face of all this, God gives them a stunning promise. He says, I will heal their land. Now, what's really interesting about this is the specific Hebrew word used for heal here. It's rapha, and it literally means to heal, cure, or treat like a medical doctor. God isn't just offering some distant, magical fix. Instead, he's portrayed as an active, treating physician, stepping right into the mess to carefully bind up the wounds of the physical land itself. It's a very hands-on kind of healing.
Section 5. 4 Steps to Restoration, a Clear Pathway. Because experiencing this profound, doctor-like Rapha healing, well, it isn't automatic. It requires an actionable, step-by-step pathway from his people. In 2 Chronicles 7:14, God lays out a very specific progression. Step 1. Turn from wicked ways, meaning you consciously shift your direction away from worldly distractions. Step 2. Humble oneself, which simply means dropping the whole illusion of self-reliance. Step 3. Pray, actually opening your mouth to call out. And finally, Step 4. Seek his face. This is about pursuing a deep, intimate relationship, not just asking for a quick transactional favor. You see, this isn't just some simple checklist you tick off. It's a continuous, connected journey of the human heart moving all the way back toward its creator.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, applying the message today and finding your restoration. So how does this 3,000-year-old historical account of temples, fire, and ancient agriculture actually bridge the gap to our modern lives today?
Well, we might not be ancient farmers dealing with literal locust plagues, right? But we all experience our own modern version of a loss of land. Whether that's failing physical health, broken family dynamics, shaken careers, or just the deep, deep exhaustion of empty efforts despite incredibly hard work. So the crucial point is this: the emotional resonance of a barren, ruined landscape is exactly the same today as it was back then. And the incredible takeaway is that God's promise of Rapha, that active, physician-like healing, it still applies directly to the ruins of our modern lives.
When your personal landscape feels totally barren, worldly solutions are eventually going to fall short. They just do. The spectacular daytime fires of success and public approval, they will always fade out. The real test is what happens when the crowds are gone. Will you seek him in the quiet night? Will you step away from all the noise, humble yourself, and pursue that deep, intimate healing where true restoration actually begins? Just take a second and think about it. Where are you seeking your own Rapha today?